Hey guys, it's Jay, here with another review video. I'm going to try adding in a new aspect of the videos called Faceless's Notes, where my good friend, aka my hand, reads over the scripts and tells me of anything that I should add. You'll know when there's an addition from him, as it will be accompanied by a blurred image of what is currently on the screen. And as always, before the review begins, I'd like to ask if you enjoy the video, leave a like and share it with others. Without further ado, on to the vid. To begin, let's take a brief look at the Cyclops Seals. As we see at the start of the episode, an actual black cloud has appeared inside of Ilios' mind, which is exactly what Ilios said would occur last episode. This cloud is blocking Ilios' ability to communicate with Shay, as in both instances where he tries to speak to Shay and give advice, Shay is unresponsive. We know Shay can't hear Ilios because of the initial blurred text that is seen when we transition from Ilios' mind to the fight. It's also very rare for Shay not to respond to Ilios, as he seemingly only does so when talking to someone else, like in last episode. But even in combat, such as against Yall, Shay still acknowledges Ilios when he tries to focus on the fight. He also does respond to Ilios during his fight with Jose, before attempting to perform Sun Through Moon. Moving on, Ilios does seem to think his brother Elimelech is the one who created the Cyclops Seals. This could imply only a Kimyo can actually make them, but it still seems reasonable for the HD family to have records on how to make them. And combining that with the knowledge that Thanatos already has, it would make sense he would be able to produce such a deadly thing. There was also a clear plan for Rajani to fight Shay, as she does have a dagger made from Dothanil, and they did have a month to prepare, so it's not surprising Elimelech would use the knowledge of the HD family to get rid of the Heart Clan member who was wielding the power of his brother. As Rajani says, the seals are also affecting the chi of Shay's body, which I did mention in last week's video. Improves their ability, excludes no ancient source of chi, not even the source that potentially helped create them. The negative effects of the Cyclops Seals, as implied by Ilios, can be negated if Shay were to simply destroy the building they are fighting in, as that would seemingly also destroy the seals themselves, alleviating Shay of the Cyclops Seals effects. Moving on to Rajani, we see the talent her family possesses is known as Widow's Night, the cursed talent of the Ishti family. Widow's Night melds the host with the essence of a living shadow. Eventually the host will be entirely consumed by chi. A completed curse is fatal. Once the host dies, the talent returns to the Ishti family. Details on how are unknown. Before we get into the full description, we see it says the talent is forbidden. This likely comes from the fact it is cursed, as when we are introduced to cursed chi in episode 124, the term verboten is used by Leif and Jose. Verboten translates from German to English as forbidden, and in the context of the story, it seems to be another way to refer to cursed chi, which is uncommon to come by, and is not allowed to be used, which is why Jose near the end of 124 is surprised that Code allowed Andrea to wield Norigiri. Faceless did find it interesting that I mentioned the forbiddenness of Widow's Night without bringing up Dothanil, another forbidden talent, and that's because it didn't seem very relevant to. However, there are now 3 forbidden talents we have seen, with the last one being the Eye of Time. This means that talents can be forbidden for different reasons, with Widow's Night likely being related to the curse aspect of it, Dothanil being related to the blood sacrifice technique allowing its user to cheat death, and the Eye of Time potentially coming from its time altering abilities if the drawback it has on the body isn't taken into account. Moving back to the description of Widow's Night, it says it melds the host with the essence of a living shadow. No talent type was given, but this part of the description and how we see her use the talent itself leads me to see Widow's Night as a hide type talent, with it clearly granting shadow related abilities. The ability she uses the most being a form of shadow needle tendrils that spawn from her backside, which she is able to send out multiple of at once. She also has the ability to form as a shadow on surfaces and move across them. She does this to avoid 2 of Shay's attacks, with it seemingly being implied while in this form she can move faster, with part of this coming from how fast she appears on Shay's right side after originally being on his left. You could also imply that she possesses a form of reconstitution, as after she is stabbed and pinned against the wall by Zahara, she is able to remove herself, simply sliding over, and after she has no form of injury from the attack. This also applies to the quote-unquote hide itself, as after Rajani is burned by the intensity of Shay's body heat, the shadows reform over the area she was injured at. Outside of the talent's shadow related abilities, the talent once transferred gives its host all the knowledge of its power, which is why Rajani can wield the talent as if she's had it her whole life. The downside of this talent of course comes from it being cursed, as when the curse fully takes over the host, it will kill them without fail. As the description says, a completed curse is fatal. This shows the difference between Noragiri's curse and Widow's Knight's curse, as the curse from Noragiri, when applied to a strong enough vessel, would erase the consciousness of the vessel, leaving Noragiri free reign of that body, which as Leigh puts it would be the birth of a new living talent. However, Widow's Knight's curse is sacrificial and provides all the power it can for when it needs to be used, while slowly bonding to its host, eventually killing them. And when the reason for the host's sacrifice is no longer present, it returns to the Ishti family. Faceless points out that the curses can be seen as different forms of symbiosis, with Noragiri's curse being more akin to parasitism, which is an intimate association between organisms of two or more kinds, one in which a parasite obtains benefits from a host which it injures, and the benefit Noragiri would be getting is a body it can inhabit. But Widow's Knight's curse is more akin to mutualism, which simply means a mutually beneficial association between different kinds of organisms. The benefit the host gets is the power to protect the family, and the benefit the curse gets is being the power that's used to protect the family. Moving on, as the description says, it is unknown how the Widow's Knight's talent returns to the Ishti family, but there are a couple means we could guess. The first would be using the now dead corpse of the host to make its way back to the family, which also provides a means for the family to bury their members. The second would be similar, but instead would have the liquefied talent itself traveling back to the Ishti family, with both means requiring the talent to subconsciously be aware of the location of the Ishti family members. You could also say, like a talent transfer, it just appears next to a member of the Ishti family, and in all three possibilities, the talent would be sealed in a vial, making it so it can be used when needed. Rajani also mentions that this talent was held by the women of her family, which makes them a contrast to the Hemlocks, as the Hemlocks are a male-focused family, but the Ishtis are a female-focused family. The Hemlock men also remain in the fight, as their ashes become one with the talent, but the Ishti women sacrifice themselves, giving their life for the survival of their family, but are allowed to rest when their sacrifice is over. The sentiment of family survival is also pointed out by Rajani, as she says by passing on the Widow's Knight talent, the Ishti family's numbers grew while others went extinct. This somewhat implies passing on a talent in the earlier times guaranteed a family's survival, as there would be one Kimyo who could defend them, and in contrast, if a Kimyo couldn't pass on their talent before they died, their family was more likely to be wiped out. And this implies that a myriad of clans and families could have existed in the older times, but died out simply due to them not passing on their talents. And lastly, looking at Shay, Zahara is very clearly his primary weapon, and this makes sense for a few reasons. The first is that it can boost the power of Ilios, so whenever Shay begins a fight with her, she will be strengthening him greater than he already is. The second and likely second most important reason is that whenever Shay chooses to flow the flames of Ilios through her, it will not do any damage to her, and as seen with Sun through Moon, Shay can channel whatever amount of Ilios he wants with her. The third and most important reason is that it is akin to him wielding a better version of a Kantio, with a Kantio being the flame spear Shay would create for close quarters combat that he used in a Naginata style. Zahara actually being a Naginata surpasses that of a Kantio, as the two reasons I listed before are things a Kantio cannot do, and because she is a Naginata, a weapon type Shay trained with for almost 2 years, he is far more comfortable with her in combat. He can also throw her like he did with a Kantio, but instead of having to use chi to form another, he can simply recall her from his shadow, which he does in this episode. Something else I thought about while typing out the script for this video is that this fight and Shay's use of Zahara relates back to what Andrea tells Shay in episode 45. In their training at the start of season 2, Andrea tells Shay to use Muramasa, as Leo had mastered the kick dart as his weapon of choice in the event he would not be able to use his flames. The lesson she was trying to teach Shay then is now resurfacing in this fight, as Shay, while he can still technically use Ilios' flames, is choosing not to. But in the event he can't use them at all, just like Leo, he has a weapon of choice, with that being a Naginata, which is now Zahara. Zahara being Shay's primary weapon also makes sense when keeping Andrea in mind, as he did get the weapon from her, so you could say he always has a part of her when he fights. And with that being said, I'd like to shout out Echo Ronan for the comment he left on last week's review video, specifically the part where he says, "I think the fact we got Zahara being pulled out while Rajani was mid-dialogue and was glowing purple was to give us the reader a reminder ponder on why Shay is not interested in this proposal. And while this likely wasn't Brent's intention of that scene, this interpretation, combined with what I said moments ago, only adds to the grander point I'm trying to make. Now, if Zahara is Shay's primary weapon, that makes Vinter his secondary weapon. And this makes sense when you realize Shay only uses Vinter after throwing Zahara at Rajani. So if Shay didn't throw her, he likely wouldn't have switched weapons at all. This also makes sense as the axe-related combat would be the second style of weapon he actually learned and got used to. Vinter as a secondary weapon in this fight is very good, as it is unaffected by the Cyclops Seals, as the chi that makes up its talent is not ancient, which is why Shay is able to use the 2 ice attacks he does. How Shay uses those ice attacks is actually very intentional. If you notice, Shay did not connect the added attachment that would increase the length of Vinter. This means it's the natural short version, and compared to Zahara provides less overall reach. However, Vinter's ice circumvents this, and the ice slash makes up the difference that having the added length of the attachment would have, and actually provides even more, as well as a larger area to be effective. The second ice attack is similar to what he does against Jose, and in my opinion replicates the explosive force he would have expressed if he was using Ilios instead. It's also clear this attack was meant to be a devastating and finishing blow if it had landed, and I say this giving Rajani's somewhat exposed position, as well as how intense it looks when Shay actually swings Vinter. One last thing I'd like to point out is that Rajani makes a comment that Shay isn't using his flames to maintain his War State armor, and this makes perfect sense, as the armor of War State is tied to Ilios, and the Cyclops Seals are hindering the Ilios talent's full capabilities. So instead of using his chi to form his flames, which could make the situation worse for him in the long run, he completely opts out of using his flames altogether, which conserves the chi he still has access to, and uses it to maintain his state's armor for as long as he can. This conservation of chi that Shay is demonstrating is exactly what Lewis lacked in his fight against Yall. As we are aware, Death Stance was rapidly draining his chi, and not very long after entering the form, its brand ability wasn't very viable, making entering the form somewhat useless. It also gives the impression that he wasn't conserving enough of his chi, or started to do so too late. Moving back to Shay though, him trying to maintain his War State armor is very important, as with these Cyclops Seals dampening both of his sources of chi, he likely isn't pouring as much as he could into his rock armor technique, which means his durability is less than it was when he fought Jose. We also see him use the armor to defend himself as Rajani capitalizes on his lack of weapon on his right side, but Shay is able to block the incoming attack specifically with a part of his armor, which he couldn't do if it wasn't there. To end this off, though brief, I like how these Cyclops Seals give us an insight into Ilios' perspective while he is inside his mind, as we have never gotten to see what the world looks like from the perspective of a mental living talent. Shay of course can't hear Ilios, so he wouldn't have heard of Ilios' advice to cause more destruction, but it's slightly in his own nature to do so to a certain extent, so you may be wondering why he isn't doing so here. I think in his own way, Shay is trying to preserve some part of the Ishti family. He will likely defeat Rajani, but when he does, who knows what will happen to her family in the Colosseum. So even as he fights her, he intends to keep the structure of her family intact. He has done something similar to this at the end of the Rokash fight, when he suggested the pyramid that stayed intact upon Rokash's death stand as a memorial for who he was and not who he became. So he could be trying to do the same thing here. A gripe I have with this episode comes from Rajani's talent, and not with anything that it does, but the fact no talent type was given when a name and full description were. There's genuinely no reason to intentionally exclude the talent type, especially when how it operates falls very clearly into one. Even if you wanted to save some of the mystery of it being a potential dual type, there's nothing in this episode that would stop you from doing that, and it would only raise questions as to how said extra type would fit into the talent capabilities. This same logic applies if the talent being cursed affects its type in some form or fashion, as all of that could simply be explained later on. I have no clue as to why Brand does this, especially within a series where ability classifications were established very early on. And lastly, for the comments of the week, I would like to put a spotlight on 3 comments. The first is from I Binge Too Much, and what I'd like to focus on is his mention of the Eye of Time being in the Ishti family vault. Just to be clear, Shay does not have the Eye of Time yet, and while I do not think it's in their family vault, I am not opposed to Shay or another character acquiring something strong from it. The second is from Track Summer, and I agree with everything everything he says, especially the mention of Ilios' experience and compassion, which is a stark contrast to his brother Thanatos. The third comes from Diesel Don Quixote. This comment was just really funny to me because the last sentence is very true. But anyway, that's the video, guys. Let me know what your favorite part of the chapter was in the comments below, as well as how you feel about the things I mentioned throughout the video. Don't forget to read the actual episode for yourself, and be sure to like it as well. And I will see y'all in the next one.